board games can make fantastic gifts, but there are many other things that you can get your fellow board gamer that are going to be enhancing their experience in some way. And in this video today, I'm going to be going over my top 10 things that you could get your fellow board gamer this either, for this holiday season, or maybe for a birthday, or maybe you just really love them that much, you're just going to get them something special spur of the moment. Now, bear in mind, these are just my top 10 things, definitely, they aren't going to be on a scale either. So, these are just going to be placed 1 to 10, but 1 doesn't mean that it's the thing that you should prioritize the most, and 10's not the thing that you should be prioritizing the least. Hopefully this list is going to be good enough for anyone to sort of figure out what they can get someone as a nice little gift. Now let's just dive into it. So first up on the list is going to be dice trays. Now there are two different sort of, main forms you can get. You can get sort of the wooden ones that are pretty nice indeed. So this is my favorite dice tray, and this is the one I use every single time I play D&D or any other game that's related to dice. Works fantastic with dice thrown, by the way. And yeah, it's a wormwood. Wormwood's known to make some really high quality tabletop stuff. This has lasted me multiple years, and it hasn't really found much wear. Obviously, depending on what dice you're using, you definitely want to be careful when using wooden dice trays. So if you are giving this to someone who has like metal dice for D&D, for example, I probably wouldn't give them a metal one just because that can damage the wooden interior. But there are many other companies out there that can make wooden dice trays, as well as something like Etsy is a nice way to sort of support local crafters as well, or something a little bit more handmade from just like an individual rather than a company, I guess I should say. And additionally, you can also get cheaper versions of dice trays. So this is one that's really easily portable. It actually clips together. And you can actually unfold it so it turns into something like this, where you can just put it down and roll your dice. This one is this one is not the greatest example because it is a little bit wonky. There are definitely better versions out there. This is a very cheap one. You can get ones that have like faux leather in it and stuff like that as well. My friend has one that clips in a similar form like this, but it's a lot sturdier than the flimsy one here. But there's plenty of options out there that you can get. You can even potentially make your own. I mean, dice trays aren't exactly the most difficult thing to sort of plan out ahead, but maybe you're a crafter, maybe you're good with woodworking. That would be an excellent gift, and in that way you could also customize it as well. While I also don't have it here, one of my friends, in the line of dice trays, you can also get dice towers. Dice towers are really nice because it sort of adds a little bit more excitement, a little bit more hands off if someone thinks that they are inherently the one that rolls bad. Well, dice towers are really nice. You just have a handful of dice, you just throw it in the top of the tower, and it comes out the bottom in a random assortment. And again, just like dice trays, there are many forms that those can take as well. Next up on the list is going to be board game mats. Now these can be in the form of either personal game mats, whether it be something like Dice Throne. I know Dice Throne has some personal game mats. Magic the Gathering has their own personal game mats. There's a lot of cool game mats that you can find on something like Etsy, like that have specific outlines for where cards will go. Final Girl has some really good mats as well that I really need to get my hands on at some point, that can easily outlay where all your components should go, but also not only that, they're just visually appealing, and also most of them are usually made out of neoprene, which is just a really nice material to just roll dice on, as well as, not to mention, picking up cards. That's probably one of the biggest reasons why I really like game mats, is for if you are playing especially with unsleeved cards. If you've ever played with unsleeved cards on like a hardwood table or something super flat like that, picking up the cards off the table can be a real pain in the ass sometimes. So the game mats make it really easy just to sort of pick them up off the table without any issue if you are using unsleeved cards. The other way that you can get game mats is just a table-wide game mat, which is actually what I'm using here. I have this one specifically from BoardGameTables.com, which I believe they have rebranded to AllPlay.com. I'll put a correction in post-edit if I made a mistake there. But I haven't really made a review of this game mat, but honestly, just as a mini review, it doesn't really need its own video. I absolutely love it, and I 100% think it was worth the price. I was able to find one of their pre-cut versions that just perfectly fit my table, but you can also, there's plenty of other game companies out there with different materials, different colors, stitching, that kind of thing, that you can also cut in your own way. You can also, there are many guides out there to actually make your own. I'm really lazy, so I didn't go that route, but there are a handful of guides out there to use whatever materials you have on hand to make your own game mat. And that way, again, just like with the dice trays, if you made it yourself, you could add your own customization and flair for the other person. Maybe you have like a name for your D&D group or something, getting that branded on there, that could be really cool. So that's another great option there. But the table-wide game mat has been great for all of our games. It's just been really solid. Not only that, if you are someone who moves from house to house to play different games, or maybe you're LGS, then it's really easy. This one specifically from BoardGameTables.com has a carrying case, and it's just super easy to roll up. I believe you can also, for most of them, especially if they're just like the neoprene, you can throw them in your washer, but don't throw it in your dryer. You can throw it in your washer, and it's really easy to clean as well. And sort of going back to the dice trays thing regarding metal dice, if you are someone who has someone at the play group who uses metal dice for like D&D or something like that, having a neoprene game mat like this, you can roll it on your hardwood table with the game mat and have no issues in damaging anything. You just have to be a little bit careful. The neoprene mats definitely make dice a little bit more bouncy, so if you have a very hard dice chucker, then you'll want to make sure their power levels are lowered a little bit. The next thing that you can think of getting your fellow board gamer is getting sort of deluxeifications for their favorite board games. So if you know what their favorite board games are, and especially if they are a board game that is ever evolving, for example, I really like the Arkham Horror living card game. That is something that I bought some extra deluxeifications for through Etsy and just other means. So like I have these coin capsules that were really cheap, but they actually are able to house the tokens in them. And if you've never played Arkham Horror, the living card game, you have a dice, or not a dice bag, you have a bag with all of these tokens in it, and you have to like shuffle and move them around a lot and pull them out. This just adds a nice tactile feel, it protects them, something like that. Additionally, I have these little arrows that correspond to pointing to different locations playing Arkham Horror, the living card game. But there's tons and tons of things that you can get. Just like you could also get game mats for them, you could also get just better components. That's generally the best, or not the best way, but it's generally the most common way that people deluxeify their board games, is by getting just higher quality components. So something like Etsy, for example, I'm going to use Etsy a lot because honestly that's one of the easiest places to find deluxeifications and upgrades to your favorite board games. But in place of like the cardboard tokens that you can usually find for board games, one of the most common deluxeifications is people usually get like acrylic tokens or higher quality plastic tokens for their board games, just to make them a little bit more tactile, a little bit more sturdy. So being able to deluxeify a board game is really nice to just, if you know they're going to be putting so many hours into a game. Final Girl is another excellent game that I know people play a ton of just over and over again. So getting higher quality components or getting like miniatures to replace standees, stuff like that can really enhance the board game experience. And just make sure you know that they're, of course, going to get some use out of it. Next up on the list is going to be containers for your dice and components. And this is a really big one for a lot of games that I own. For example, I have like this big ass container just for multiple different dice. And going back to Arkham Horror, the living card game, that had a lot of small cardboard chits or cardboard tokens that needed to be tracked, and there wasn't a great place for them in the box that it came with. So I went out and got these just from the dollar store, and they perfectly house different components. And not only that, they perfectly fit the game box, where I can actually put them in the game box and keep them contained like that. So getting different containers for different components is really great. If you want sort of things that are specific to board gaming, there's a lot of companies out there that build containers for specific board games. There's like generic ones, or you can just go the cheap route like I did and just go to your dollar store and get things that fit whatever game that you're playing. I would definitely do some research ahead of time, just make sure that you're not getting them just extra things that are going to take up more space. That's, again, like I mentioned, these fit in the Arkham Horror living card game box, and they work just great. So yeah, definitely do a little bit of your research there, but I know, fighting for space and table space and, keeping things clean and order, especially when you are playing some of the larger games out there, having containers where everything is easily accessible from each player, you can pass things over, that just makes, again, just for a much smoother experience overall. And going along the same line, you can also get like dice bags. Dice bags are, I would consider them containers, but these are really, really great. These were actually handcrafted that I got from some, local conventions for the past few years. But they're great for holding dice, but you could also use them for a multitude of other things. So there's a lot of ways that you can sort of figure out how things should be contained. You definitely have to do a little bit of research on the game that you might be getting them for. But in general, if you're just getting like generic stuff like dice bags and just like the generic containers, they can work for a ton of different games. So you don't really have to stress too much about that. Another great gift idea is card sleeves. Now, card sleeves are like top tier gift idea in my opinion. They're just add so much to the experience. And also not only that, it just protects the board game itself. If you are someone who plays a lot of card-based games, whether it be like deck builders or deck construction games like Marvel Legendary or Aeon's End, things like that, or of course, my new favorite board game, Dice Throne, sleeves are a really, really great addition to a board game experience, and you're also just protecting your investment. They're just really, really they just make the cards feel a lot better in your hands. There's a lot of ways that you can just customize them if you want to get like branded dice, or not, if you want to get branded card sleeves with like a specific image of a character on it. Those are usually a lot of options for like some of the more popular games. And, I'm someone who used to play a lot of Magic the Gathering, so when you're shuffling a lot of cards and things like that, cards get a lot of wear and tear. But not only that, cards also just make it inherently easier to shuffle, because usually when people shuffle with unsleeved cards, they'll usually do this type of shuffle, which honestly I don't think is as good of a randomization. Playing for Magic the Gathering, pile shuffling, where you actually weave in all the cards like this, is a much better way to shuffle cards. It's just also just super satisfying to do. So I personally really like this way of shuffling a lot, and it definitely helps if you don't have a board game mat. It definitely makes picking up cards a lot easier, and you won't have to be scratching the edges of the card off with your nails when you do that. I will say this one definitely requires quite a bit of research, though, just because not every single card game is going to have the standard size of card. So, for example, Dice Throne is a good example because these are actually slightly more narrow than your typical card, like playing card. So if you went out and got like card sleeves that you normally use for Magic the Gathering, those are going to actually be too big. So the best way to go about it is Board Game Geek, and Reddit has plenty of resources of people just researching not only how many, what the size of the card sleeve you'll need for a specific game, but also how many you'll need to actually cover a full set, for example. So if you really want to cover the whole board game, then you can figure out exactly how many card sleeves you need to be buying. Alright, so the rest of the stuff on this list is going to be more board game adjacent, and they're not necessarily going to be components or things like that, but they're going to be things that are nonetheless going to make a board game experience much better or more enjoyable, I think, for a lot of the people out there. Now, the next thing I recommend for a gift idea for a board gamer is getting some high-quality dinner trays. I know that's not something that people might think about when thinking of a board game experience, but if you are someone, or if you know someone who doesn't exactly have a ton of table space, or maybe they're a solo gamer who maybe just has a small desk that they play games on and would like some more table space that way, dinner trays are an extremely useful investment, I think, to just open up for a larger game. My friends and I generally play a ton of larger campaign games, and this just makes it a lot easier not to have everything cluttered on the table. Not only that, if you're playing board games, you're generally going to be having snacks and drinks as well, especially when you have like a table-wide board game mat and you don't really want to get crumbs and stains on it, really. Having dinner trays just off to the side are really, really useful for just making sure the board game stuff stays on the board game table and the snacks and everything else is all around. It also just makes it less nerve-wracking when I'm sure many people have had that moment where they see someone open up a drink and put it on the table beside, card games and stuff like that. That always gives me the heebie-jeebies. But yeah, I really, really like the addition of the dinner trays to my board game table. Not only that, depending on the table size that you have, sometimes they just fit perfectly within it. So, for example, I can have two. If we only have 4 people at the board game table, I can use the 2 narrow ends of the table to have a dinner tray. In addition, I can even fit a dinner tray in between both players on either side of the table. So in total, you have 4 dinner trays that can house a wide range of things. And they're also pretty easy to store away, depending on what kind you get. For example, I have a kind where it has like a nice, like rollable housing unit, I guess. I don't know what to call it, storage unit, and they can easily fold up and stay there. So it doesn't take up a lot of space for the 4 dinner trays. So you can just pull them out whenever you really need them. Next up on this gift guide list is going to be a speaker. Now, good Bluetooth sound speaker, or it doesn't have to be Bluetooth, but just a solid speaker is a really, really great board game enhancer. This one leans a little bit more if you're playing more larger tabletop games or tabletop role-playing games, because it really, really adds to the atmosphere and ambiance. But this is a really, really solid addition. Not only that, if you are playing with a group that generally doesn't, maybe you're a quiet group and stuff like that, it can definitely help with sort of filling the air when, people aren't really talking and aren't, and are just sort of making decisions on their turn. It just fills the room and just makes it a little bit more lively. But not only that, if you are playing larger campaign games, you can really just set the mood with specific playlists from Spotify and stuff like that for like fantasy battles, or maybe you're playing like a more sci-fi themed thing. I think, a speaker is a fantastic addition. I always have music playing when we're playing board games at a chill thing, and you can also play just like lo-fi chill jazz is also a common thing that I play in the background. It doesn't have any lyrics, so it doesn't get in the way of talking and having discussions, but it just, again, adds to the experience. And you can also just have a good quality Bluetooth speaker for any other use as well. Like, I've had this thing for probably almost 10 years, if not more. It's I've taken it to lake trips and things like that. It's just been absolutely solid. This one specifically is like the Bose SoundLink Speaker 3. It's a pretty old model, so you can probably get one cheaper or for higher quality. But this thing is just a tank, and it's lasted me a really, really long time. Easy to transfer, long battery time, low charge time. Super solid. All right, we are getting close to the end of the list, so next up is going to be storage solutions. Now, this one, honestly, I don't really have a lot of experience with because I need to find more storage solutions, but things like bookshelves or, just boxes that are specifically designed to carry board games, those things are really, really great additions to just, make things smoother, make things less of a crazy, wild scenario, a messy scenario, which I know some people like myself definitely need to work on. I definitely have board games strewn about this room. I have board games like under the desk here and stuff like that, but that's definitely one of the things that I put on my wish list is just a solid storage solution. And this can also be a throwback to one of the previous things I listed, which is deluxifying your board game. Again, on Etsy for certain games, there are handcrafted wooden things or just custom-made storage solutions for your board games. There's a lot of official ones out there as well, and there's even companies that build backpacks that are specifically designed, board game carrying cases, that sort of thing are another excellent way to store games, but not all of that, just transfer games as well. But also at the same time, people are really proud of their board game collections. So when you are looking for a storage solution in mind, that's also one thing that you might want to look into, is just something that's going to be aesthetically pleasing. I know like the common one is sort of getting those Kallax cases or whatever bookshelves you get from IKEA, the very standard ones that like every board gamer has, except me. Those are really great for just displaying your collection and being proud of your collection as well. You can also even build shelving units and stuff like that to prominently display certain board games. And then you can also extend that if your board game is like a large campaign game that has some really, really cool miniatures. You can get like cases for the miniatures specifically, and that will also go into that's a nice segue into my next thing, which is going to be paint sets and paints. Now, paint sets and paints is one that I think can really, really add to the experience of a board game. Again, this is going to be mostly just for the board games and tabletop games that are going to be larger, like campaign games that will typically come with like miniatures, for example, because obviously that's the only thing that you're really going to paint. But I think it's a really, really great gift suggestion because not only that, it depends on how far you want to go with it. You could even go ahead and maybe get the paints yourself, and maybe you paint your friends' miniatures ahead of, maybe you sneak them away, or maybe you ask if you can borrow their board game, take their miniatures, and you can paint them up and give them as a gift. Obviously, you might want to like ask them ahead of time if you can do that. But also, it can just be a great bonding experience for a loved one. Paint nights are something that my friends and I have done in the past. I've painted, I've painted stuff with my significant others in the past as well, and it just makes for a really, really nice way to spend time together. And then when you're done, you actually just get the benefit of having some really, really cool miniatures to play with which, if you're playing something like Gloomhaven or like Kingdom Death Monster, these, for example, are Kingdom Death Monster stuff. They're just really, really great additions, and they 100% add to the experience. But also, if you are someone who is a little more tabletop adjacent as well, like myself, and play a lot of tabletop role-playing games, they can also double in use. If you have some really, really cool miniatures from a specific board game, like Tainted Grail or whatever, you can actually double those, and if they're painted up, they're just going to make a great addition to your tabletop role-playing experience also. This one I would definitely do a lot of research on. Of course, there's a lot of ways you could go about it, but when it comes to getting paints, just make sure you're getting proper paints for miniatures. Not just because it's paint doesn't mean it's going to work for a miniature. You're going to also need to make sure to get things like decent brushes, but also you're going to need to get primer and sealer as well, because you want to make sure to protect the miniatures after they're painted, but also primer is generally needed before you even put on paint, just to make sure the paint has something to attach to. But there are a ton of resources out there to painting your own miniatures, how to paint your own miniatures, things like that, so I'm not going to be going over into the super in-depth stuff. Okay, last but not least, we have just sort of a more generic suggestion of things. These are going to be what I call, session enhancers. Sort of similar to like the Bluetooth speaker I mentioned in the past, but they're going to be stuff that are more general use things, but are just excellent for someone who board games a lot. So the first thing is going to be obviously, mugs and, water bottles. This is, for example, it's like a custom Dungeon Master mug that I got as a gift. So things like this can really, really make for a fun experience. You can customize it in a lot of ways. Water bottles are excellent if you are if you have a friend or something who doesn't hydrate enough and they generally just have a glass of water. Water bottles are also nice, not only just for, drinking stuff, but also just making sure things don't get accidentally spilled across the board game table. But yeah, mugs are excellent as well. Like, there's a lot of branded mugs that you can get. This one is an Akira mug, but this one actually my sibling actually got for Christmas and actually designed it and had a company print it. This is my favorite mug, honestly. In addition to that, coasters are also another great addition to board game stuff, just to protect things as well. If you are using, if you're having cups with, high condensation, typically on like hardwood and stuff like that, that's obviously a big no-no. So getting coasters is really, really great, and also just to protect your board game materials also underneath. So this is like a lot of my stuff is tabletop role-playing themed, but you can obviously get custom-made stuff that are more board game specific. These are like leather, really, really high-quality leather board game coasters or tabletop role-playing coasters that has some fun messages on it. This is like, it says well shit and as a natural one. Obviously that's going to make no sense to many people if they don't play D&D, but yeah, coasters are excellent, actually excellent. Put that away. And the last thing to sort of sum up this general session enhancer is going to be sort of more clothing specific stuff. So just cozy things in general. I know people love to get cozy, especially if you're someone who's a solo board gamer. I mean, just getting cozy with a board game you love playing every single night is just a really, really nice thing. And just having something to cozy up with, like a blanket or having slippers or whatever, is going to just make the experience a lot more cozy and enjoyable. And you could even get like more branded things for that as well, like getting a really, really nice bunny hug, or I guess hoodie. Sorry, bunny hug is a provincial term that we use here in Saskatchewan for a hoodie. So a bunny hug or a hoodie is going to be a great way to be cozy as well. And there's tons of board game themed hoodies that you can get for just a fun time. Alright, and that's going to be it for this video. That is going to be my top 10 gift suggestions for board gamers that aren't gifts, and board game adjacent items. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and hopefully you got something out of it. Regardless, thank you so much for watching. I will be back with another video hopefully soon. Not really sure what it's going to be. I'm just sort of going with the flow, trying to slowly get back into the swing of, creating board game content for you guys. And I really, really thank you so much for the great welcoming back with that Dice Throne video that I had. Didn't expect that one to get so many views. I also have a role player adventure, not role player adventure, a role player's digital session if you want to get some gameplay out of that from me, because I've just been learning that game and having an absolute blast with it on the PC. Ooh, the sun's coming out. All right. That's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you got something out of it. And if this is the only video you happen to see on my channel, hopefully you have a fantastic and happy holidays, and I will see you in the next one.